We're going to write some simple demo code just to show some aspects of the Security Manager, and we'll get into far more details later in the class. So the first thing I want to do here is to get a system property. So I'm going to say string version equals. I'm going to use system.getProperty. And the key we're going to pass to this is java.version. And this should return the current version of Java. And then I'm going to simply print that out to the console. So if I build this from inside IDEA and then go to my command prompt, and then from here, I can run the application. And that prints out the current Java version I'm using, which at the time of recording is 1.80.45, and you can read that here. Now, suppose I want to run this under a security manager. So we've seen to do that, we use java -d java.security.manager. When I execute the code now, it will tell the runtime to use the security manager, and access to the property will be checked. In this case, the access still works. We're still allowed to read system properties. So let me go and change this code. And what I want to do now is to try and access a file. So here, we're going to use Java 8, and we're using the new try with resources. I'm going to say try file writer equals new file writer. I'm going to try to access a file in the temp folder, and let's just call this out.txt. And to this, I'll simply do writer.write hello world. This throws an IO exception, so we need to handle that in some way. So I'm going to say throws IO exception here, and then build the code. So back on the console, if I try and run this code without a security manager, then the code works okay. And if I go to the directory, the file is there. It's called out.txt. So let me delete that. Go back to the console and run the code again, but this time I'm going to use a security manager. And what happens now is that we get an exception, and we get an access denied exception. And notice the exception is quite specific. It's a Java IO file permission, and it tells me exactly what it's trying to do. It's trying to write to the ctemp out.txt directory. So how does it know that's not allowed? Well, that's part of the policy file that I've listed here. So notice in the policy file, we have permission to read the Java version. So when I access the Java version for inside my code, that permission is granted, and we're allowed to access this permission. However, we don't have permission to write to the file, but we can add that here. So if I go back to the console and grab the text and copy it to the clipboard. So if I edit the policy file and add that permission, so I need to say permission, get rid of these quotes. It's a Java IO file permission. The permission is to access this directory. I need to make sure these are forward slashes. This is a URL, and it'll be read as forward slashes. And then use comma right, and then at the end of this place a semicolon. So that's give me file permission to write to that file. So if I save this, go back to the console, and then run the code again, the code now works. And just to prove that, back to the permissions, if I comment that out and save it, go back to the console, and run it again, it fails. So through the policy file, we can specify which permissions a given piece of code is allowed to use. In the next chapter, we'll get into a lot more detail of how these policies work, where the file is loaded from, where the code is loaded from, and how we can tie all of these things together.